Hello and happy Halloween.
What's wrong with your voice?
I'm allergic.
Allergic.
I have allergies so bad. It's affecting my voice and my breathing and everything.
Fall allergies are a thing.
It's terrible.
It's real.
And so, yeah.
I feel ya. My ear on my right side has been clogged for like a week.
Yeah, I get that where it's like I have water in my ear.
Yeah.
And my doctor told me just to take an antihistamine.
See, I took some the other day and I felt all right. I mean, but if I take an antihistamine, I fall asleep. So I can only take it at night. But
we're supposed to be talking about Halloween things.
Hi,
not
happy
old
Halloween.
People things.
We are old. That's not old. That's allergic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Halloween. So I feel like it's just passed me by. I just feel like this Halloween is snuck up, and here it is. And I hadn't really celebrated the season, and I'm afraid that the rest of the holiday season is going to be the same way.
It won't. It won't, because the way you're feeling right now, you will turn it around, and you'll be like, man, next holiday, I'm be prepared.
I don't know. So Halloween,
yes,
on Sunday this year,
yes,
and there's always confusion when Halloween falls on Sunday, and you have kids that'll show up and trick or treat at your house on Saturday and Sunday.
I don't answer the door on Saturday.
Yeah, you don't give out candy.
I don't give out candy on any day other than Halloween. I don't care.
I'm like that, I think, and I'm just like, if you're not going to trick or treat on Halloween, you don't get candy from me.
That's right.
And
I'll eat it myself.
But then I think it's not these kids' fault. Their parents are the ones that make them go out.
Well, then their parents can buy them some fucking candy.
Yeah, they don't get any candy, and it's kind of sad.
Sorry, I just made this episode not child-friendly.
I know. Children should not be listening anyway.
Also true.
Go get candy. Stop listening to our podcast. We do have a beer.
We do. Let's talk about that beer.
Our live beer review. If you're new to the show, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Welcome to our allergy-filled show. You know what? I have allergies, and with my allergies, we're burning incense. I feel like we kind of have to burn incense. It sort of adds to the Halloween atmosphere. Yeah, but it certainly doesn't make my allergies any better.
No, it's kind of making the mood a little smoky.
Yeah.
So what we're drinking today is by Blue Tarp Brewing, Decatur. It's called Bloodmoon. Bloodmoon, all one word. It's a wheat ale.
Holy crap!
And
it's red.
Look
at that.
It looks like pink blood.
It is.
When's the last time you ever cut up a fresh beet on a cutting board? And all that pink gets everywhere.
It hasn't been too long.
Exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, it hasn't been too long ago.
I love beet juice, by the way. So this is a wheat ale brewed with bergamot and beets, clearly.
I've never had beer with beets.
Neither have I.
It's like a beet beer.
So I'm going to read what it says. It says
it's a beet box beer.
Beet box. Look
at that.
The blood moon has risen and brings with it a stiff breeze through the citrus groves. A sacrifice must be made to the moon goddess.
Look at that. Even the head is well, it's pink.
Maybe she will be fooled by this bloodless offering. Wow. It also says in parentheses, many beets were harmed in the making of this beer.
Take a picture of that.
Okay.
We need to post it.
So this is the beer that we're drinking. I will post it. It is super red. Let me take a couple.
I want to get the red head.
Here, put this next to it.
Well, okay, yeah.
Okay, I'll take that there. That there picture? Right there. Got it. Okay. Now I get to open mine. It is very, it looks like beet juice. It is super pink. Super pink. Now, obviously, it's a little red.
Is it going to stain our lips and stuff? Are we going to look like some kid after having a snow cone?
No. No, I don't think so. Now, this was a gift to us from your wife.
Yeah, she picked it out. So just knowing that it's got beet juice in it, I'm thinking it's going to taste like beets.
And it does not.
Beets. No, but it's very earthy tasting. It's got a very interesting taste.
Beets have an extremely earthy taste. Let's see if I can decipher.
Interesting. Okay. It does have a little, it's not an IPA, but it's got a little bit of an IPA taste.
It's got a hop to it.
Yeah, just a tiny, tiny bit.
I don't sense any bergamot just yet.
I'm not sure what that's going to be like.
So bergamot is a citrus. Did you make it?
I just threw something across the room into the garbage can with my left hand.
And you made it.
It went like totally right down the middle and went right in. Didn't
Nothing
hit
but
this
net.
side with my left hand.
Maybe you should be left-handed.
Maybe that's what, like on Gilligan's Island, Mrs. Howell got superpowers when she ate radioactive beets.
Oh my God! Did she really?
Yeah, and maybe I, drinking the beet beer, have gotten superpowers
with your left hand.
And I can now, with my left hand, I can actually shoot baskets.
I'm afraid of what you're going to do later when you're all alone with your left hand.
With my left hand. What are you doing in there? Shooting baskets.
Shooting something. All right, so we have our beer.
Yeah.
And we're ready to talk about Halloween. But before we get into what we have to offer you,
we have a special thing.
We do. Let's discuss. Go ahead.
All right. So we opened up the floodgates.
Floodgates.
We opened up like we do every year and solicited stories.
Yeah.
We said, if you have a story, please submit the story for our storytelling podcast.
Our Halloween storytelling podcast.
And someone did. We only got one this year.
One person.
One.
Which is fine.
I'm not going to complain. But it was the same one person as last year.
The same one person who has done it every year.
Patrick, Dog Crate. You know him. You love him. You communicate with him on the Disasterbator group.
We love him. Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, he actually named the Disasterbators, and he always writes a Halloween story. So,
and what did he call us in his email? Disaster Masters?
Yeah.
Wow.
Master of Disaster. I want that to be me. Oh crap. Okay.
What?
So anyway, we're going to read his story.
Okay.
We'll start off the Halloween podcast with a haunted story by Patrick Dog Crate Wilcox, and we'll just go through the story here.
After the story, we'll be right back.
We'll be right back. By the way, the story is called "The Strange Thing About Decimal Points."
There's lots of strange things about
There are. Being an IT person, you should know all of the strange things about decimal points.
I'm not a mathematician. I'm an IT person.
All right, let's do a story. Here we go.
All right.
The Strange Thing About Decimal Points by Patrick. Danny Boggs was in about as much trouble as a 13-year-old could be in. There's no way that he'd been able to lie or bluff his way out of this situation. He needed help, that's for sure. He picked up the phone and considered which one of his amazing groups of friends to call first, and more importantly, how much to tell them. But we're jumping ahead in the story. Let's back up 2 hours. Are you sure you don't want to go to the city with us? Danny's mom asked him, with a worried look on her face. It might take your mind off things, and I know how much you like to watch your cousin play football. Danny's cousin Stuart was the starting tight end playing for the University of Cincinnati. Normally, a home game day was a big event for the family. The 2-hour trip from their rural southern Ohio farm to the big city was an excuse to do a bunch of shopping, dining, and football watching. No, thanks, Mom, Danny said sadly. Ranger doesn't have much time left with us before he dies, and I want to spend as much time with him as possible. What Danny's parents didn't know was that Ranger had actually given up his struggle with old age just before dawn this morning. His corpse was in the barn, covered with a blanket. Danny had to get his parents out of there as soon as possible, or it would be too late. Ranger had been Danny's dog for his whole life. Literally, Ranger was 15, beating Danny's time on the planet by 2 years. Being an only child, Ranger was Danny's constant companion. It wasn't long before the family dog became Danny's dog. The lanky boy with scruffy hair was not ready to part with his best friend yet. Extreme measures needed to be taken. After the cloud of dust signaling parental departure had faded, Danny raced back into the barn. According to the timer on his phone, he only had 15 minutes left, or it would be too late. Danny tore open the barn door and raced to the empty horse paddock. Once there, Danny quickly flicked a cigarette lighter to life and proceeded to light 5 black candles. As those candles blazed to life, the light quickly revealed Ranger's body in the middle of the floor. The golden retriever lay inside a circle, which was inside of a pentagram. The elaborate chalk design was filled with runes, numbers, magic symbols, and words in ancient languages. Danny didn't know what most of it meant. He had spent the last week sneaking in here after chores to copy it all down from a diagram he had found in a book. Yes, the Book of Black Magic was probably bullshit. In the back of Danny's mind, he figured he was probably wasting his time, but he just couldn't help himself. Knowing time was his enemy, Danny quickly placed a black candle at the very tip of each pentacle point. He tried to be careful and not ruin the runescape, but there wasn't a ton of room in here. As Danny breathlessly jumped to place the last candle, his toe managed to erase one tiny dot of chalk. Unfortunately, that dot was a decimal point. The number 20.00 became 2,000. Without realizing it, he had changed the radius of the spell from 20 feet to 2,000. Danny then hurried to perform the ritual to bring his dog back from the dead. With a grimace, he dipped his fingers into an old coffee cup to cover his fingers in the blood that it held. It was a combination of Ranger's and his own blood. Danny flicked the blood, Jackson Pollock style, all over the magical design, until it was decently covered. After that, the nervous but determined boy chanted the words in the ritual designed to bring beings back from the land of the dead. With great care, Danny spoke the words of power until the black prayer was complete. Danny felt exhausted. His spell was completed, but it worked. He could see that Ranger was breathing. Danny knew that he had to wait until the candles went out before the ritual was fully complete. Danny walked outside of the barn to get some air. He settled for a quiet spot near a woodpile, leaned up against the barn, and quickly drifted off to sleep. Thunk! Came a sound from nearby. It was enough to rouse Danny from his slumber. Looking at his phone, Danny saw that 2 hours had passed. Thunk! Thunk! Ugh! More sounds. They were coming from the woods, a few 100 feet or so away from the barn. It sounded like someone was digging because the sound of dirt clumps hitting other dirt was pretty distinct. Who the hell is digging on our farm? Danny asked himself as he gazed around. Danny shook off his sleepiness and raced to the house to get his father's shotgun. It must be someone who knows we go to Stewart's games and think no one is home. With a bark, Ranger fell in beside Danny as he ran. Ranger looked healthy and awesome. There was no time for thrill or joy, though. Danny made his way to the gun safe and managed to fumble his way through the combination. Shotgun and shells in hand, the lad retraced his route to go back to where he had heard the digging. Once Danny arrived, he caught his breath and moved ahead in near silence. Sure, Danny knew how to shoot a shotgun. Just point and shoot. You don't even really need to aim. But the young teen had never shot a person before. He was more than a little scared. This is all just a trick to my imagination, Danny hoped. I mean, casting a spell was probably enough to make anyone jumpy. The problem with that theory was that the sound of dirt being thrown, grunting and groaning, had not stopped. After a short creep, the woods thinned out, and Danny could see the old cemetery that his grandfather had tried and failed to get the town to relocate. It was on their land, but there was nothing they could do about it, since it was over 150 years old and fell into the category of a historic landmark. Since they couldn't do anything about it, the family just let the trees surround it and shield it from view. After a second or two, it occurred to Danny that digging and cemetery were an astoundingly bad combination of words. Still, Danny needed to know what was happening, so with a breath, he poked his head out from behind a large oak tree to confront what he assumed were deranged grave robbers, or at the very least high schoolers setting up a prank. The possibility of ancient zombies hadn't even been on the list. Nevertheless, there they were, 7 or 8 animated corpses were in the process of unearthing themselves from their no longer final resting places. They weren't that gross. They were so old that they were dry as opposed to putrid. Danny wasn't sure how a shotgun was going to fare against them, but he figured that if he could kill them before they left the cemetery, the problem would be easier to contain. Danny prepared himself for the noise and the kick, and he squeezed the trigger. The shot tore into the side of the zombie closest to him and broke a few chunks off of it. Unfortunately, the shells that Danny had grabbed were birdshot, and the zombies' dry bodies were fairly solid. The shell from the second barrel didn't do much better. After the third and fourth shots, Danny knew that the shotgun wasn't going to do the job. The undead pack was mostly free now, and they began to shuffle in Danny's direction. Ranger was whining for Danny to retreat, and Danny let himself be guided back to the house. That's when Danny called his 4 best friends. He didn't give them much of the way of details, just that there was an emergency, and they needed to bike over to his farm as soon as possible. They needed to wait for Danny at the bottom of the driveway and should bring any baseball bats, shovels, or long-handed tools that they could carry. The first to arrive was Leo. The muscled jock in training had, of course, brought 2 baseball bats. One wood, one aluminum. Not a minute later, the young lady of the group showed up. Dee Perry was far from the token girl of the group. Due to her wits and the ability to deflect all teasing with a simple raised eyebrow, she was in many ways the group's leader. The last to pedal down the street were the Vargas brothers. 13-year-old Jerry was first, followed closely by his kid brother Carlo. Carlo was 2 years younger than the rest of them, but he was more than capable of keeping up with the group's various adventures. Tucked under one arm, Dee held a pair of crutches. Jerry had a broom handle, and Carlo waved a foam pool noodle. The quartet of teens was armed for battle. As the last skidding wheel stopped, the newcomers heard the blast of a shotgun being fired up near Danny's barn. Concern flashed on their faces as it instantly dawned on them that this might not be one of their normal escapades. "Leo, stop!" Dee commanded as the bulky lad began to ride toward the shot. "Danny said to wait here." It wasn't too long before they spotted their missing friend pedaling fast through the front yard and down the long dirt driveway. A spry-looking ranger kept pace with him. Danny was only holding on to his bike with one hand because his other one still clutched his old man's gun. Without slowing much, Danny waved to them to follow him up the driveway, but more in the direction of the barn than the house. The entire story of the past 2 hours came spilling out of Danny as they breathlessly rode their bikes closer to the shambling pack of zombies. Luckily, the undead mob was very slow, and it gave Danny a few seconds to sum up the current situation. "So basically, I used a black magic ritual to bring Ranger back from the dead. I messed something up, and the spell woke up the zombies. I haven't been able to kill any of them, but they need to be taken care of before my mom and dad come home tonight. Any ideas?" "You can't take their heads off?" asked Jerry. "That's how they get killed in the movies and TV shows." "I haven't been able to get close enough to find out," Danny answered. "They're actually really tough and strong. Luckily, they're slow and stupid." By stupid, Danny explained that the monsters were easily led. He'd been leading them into circles around the barn for the past half hour. All he did was discharge the shotgun every once in a while, and the shuffling zombie platoon would begin to shuffle toward the sound of the gun. Danny handed the shotgun to Leo. "You keep them circling the barn. We're going to have a strategy session." Leo nodded seriously as he took the weapon and headed out to the front of the zombie pack. The other 4 kids began bouncing ideas off each other while Danny showed them the paddock area and the Book of Black Magic. Bury them in a big pit? No time to dig a big pit, and they had already proven that they could climb out from being buried. Pour cement all over them and make them into an Art of the Dead art project for school? They all looked at Carlo when he came up with that ridiculous idea and couldn't even begin to detail how many problems there were with that plan. Trip them up one at a time and chop their heads off? Well, possibly, but risky. Any slip-ups and one of them would end up with a crushed throat. Danny sighed and looked at his phone. It looked like the time had come to give up and call 911. That last idea made him realize he was risking his friends' lives. "What about a counter spell?" came Dee's voice from inside the paddock. The typical responses of, "What? Are you serious?" and the like cascaded down on Dee, who turned to the boys with a raised eyebrow. "Danny, you didn't turn the page," Dee continued. "On the last page it says, when the dead's job is done and they need to return to the earth, replace black with white, the blood of the damned with the water of Christ, and chant the words back to front." As the boys were still puzzling through this information in silence, Dee threw up her hands in frustration. "Guys, seriously, burn white candles instead of black, use holy water instead of blood, and chant the spell in reverse order." "It's worth a try," Danny finally said. "The original spell worked, so why wouldn't a counter spell work? Where can we get the candles and water?" "My mom's got white dinner candles," Dee offered. "I'll go get them." "Carlo and I could get water from St. Luke's," Jerry grinned. "Carlo can distract Father Ryan, and I'll grab some holy water." Danny thought for a minute. "I guess Leo and I can herd the dead into the back of the barn. They'll need to be close to the spell." Another shotgun blast echoed from outside as three kids hopped on their bikes to zoom off and gather spell components, leaving Danny and Ranger alone in the barn. "I'm down to 2 shells," Leo yelled as he passed the barn door in his circuit, leading shuffling zombies around in circles. Hearing that, Danny leaped into action. Scanning the back area of the barn showed him that besides hay bales and stacks of wooden planks, there wasn't much that could be used to make a zombie pen. Luckily, the hay bales were already stacked on either side of the barn's interior. These would make pretty good walls, but the 10-foot opening between those hay walls was going to be an issue. Danny grabbed the planks and a sledgehammer, then quickly hammered 3 planks in between hay bales, making a gate. There was nothing holding the planks in but the weight of the entire stack of hay, but it would have to do. Blam! Came the second to last shot as Leo rounded the corner and jogged up to Danny. By the time the ancient undead rounded the same corner, Danny had filled Leo in so he'd know how to spring the trap. Danny ducked into a corner as Leo stood at the opening of the hay walls. Leo leveled the shotgun and took aim as the creeping zombies made their way to him. The last shot took a chunk out of the leader, but did nothing to slow him down. Leo tossed the gun aside and ran to the back of the barn. As planned, the 8 corpses followed Leo. Up close, their groaning and moaning was truly chilling. Leo reached the back wall and picked up his 2 baseball bats that Danny had planted there. He gazed at the pack and did a quick calculation about whether running left or right gave him the best chance to get back through the gate that Danny was quickly securing. Right was the best way, Leo decided. He sprinted around to the right and started to follow the perimeter of the makeshift pen toward freedom. Aluminum struck ancient flesh as Leo connected with an outstretched arm. Its wooden twin swung outward to connect to another arm, but the zombie target managed to grab the bat as it struck. "Damn it," Leo panted as he tugged on the bat, trying to get it dislodged. "That's my favorite bat." The tugging was only managing to pull the zombie closer to him, uncomfortably closer. Leo's fight or flight finally kicked over to flight. He was stubborn, but not stupid. With Danny frantically waving and Ranger barking at him, Leo sprung forward, narrowly missing the last member of the pack. In 5 more seconds, he was back at the gate, and in 2 more, he half slid and half rolled under the lowest plank of the gate. He was covered in hay and sweat, but Leo was finally out, and their uninvited guests were trapped. Now all they had to do was wait. Dee made it back first and skidded to a stop next to her friends. Danny and Leo were holding the ends of the gate because the mass of the zombie pack was starting to work the planks loose. Every few minutes, Leo would throw a rock against the back wall of the barn. That noise was enough to make the zombies shuffle off in that direction, giving them enough time to wedge the planks back underneath the hay bales. So far, they were keeping up, but they couldn't keep holding them back like this forever. Dee, go into the paddock and carefully replace the black candles with those white ones, Danny instructed. Make sure you don't wipe or smudge any of the symbols. Nodding, Dee ducked into the paddock to complete the task. Once she finished, the short-haired teen went in search of more rocks and gravel that could be used to distract the pack. The three of them kept up sentry duty for 10 more minutes until Jerry and Carlo returned. "We got it!" Carlo yelled triumphantly as he pressed a small vial into Danny's hands. All of the yelling brought the zombies back toward the gate. With all 5 kids and a dog near the gate, they were becoming harder and harder to distract. Leo looked exhausted from all of his running as well as swinging the sledgehammer. "You got to do it now, Danny." Danny understood. His friends were all tired from biking and running. They were all pretty much running on willpower now. Grabbing the spell book, the vial, and a lighter, Danny ran over to the paddock to undo his terrible mistake. He lit the candles, sprinkled the holy water over the symbols, and began the process of chanting the spell's words from back to front. "Oh, no, no, no," Dee suddenly said from her position next to Leo. The other 3 boys turned to look at her suddenly dismayed face. "Ranger, the counterspell is going to kill him." At this point, Danny had been in the paddock about 5 minutes. Based on what he had told them previously, they only had 5 more minutes until the spell was done. The good news was that Ranger was close by, as well as a bit of a rope that could be used as a leash. The bad news was that those zombies were no longer distractible. All 8 of them were leaning against the planks as they grasped their arms out toward the kids. "You go," Leo demanded. I think I can hold this side for 5 more minutes. Jerry and Carlo have the other side. Just get on your bike and go. He'll run along with you." With a worried nod, Dee grabbed the rope and looped it around Ranger's neck. She led him over to her bike, then climbed on and began to pedal. It was slow going at first, but eventually Ranger sped up and accompanied Dee down the driveway. As in all pressure moments, time slowed for all 5 kids. Danny kept chanting those words as fast as he could. He had to be careful, though. He couldn't mess it up. The 3 other boys strained with muscles bulging as they worked to anchor the gates and keep the zombies trapped. And Dee kept pedaling and leading her dear friend's dog away from certain death. Covered in sweat, Danny chanted the last words and closed the book. The counterspell was done, but had it worked? He could see his friends from where he was, and they were still struggling to hold the zombies back. Of course, came the quick realization. The spell isn't finished until the candles burn down. Danny closed the paddock door and yelled for the other 3 to make a break for it. Their fatigue slowed them down, but they finally made it out into the fresh air. With a heave, Danny swung the barn doors closed and barred them with a 2x4. This was a proper gate. No holding required. The 4 of them slumped down to the ground. Danny was relieved to hear that Dee took Ranger away. After 30 minutes, the thumping from inside the barn slowed, and the groaning became more faint. After another 15 or so, the inside of the barn was silent. Danny called Dee to tell her it was safe to bring Ranger back. The 4 lads proceeded to load the properly dead corpses into a trailer so Danny could use his dad's tractor to haul them back down to the woods. The dead were dragged back to the cemetery and reburied. At this point, Dee and Ranger were back, and most of the cleanup was done. They all said their goodbyes and mounted up on their bikes to ride back to their homes. Just before they rode away, Dee stopped and turned to Danny. "One thing you haven't told us, where the hell did you get an actual functioning spell book that can wake the dead?" "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," Danny said, trying to duck the question. "After this, we'll believe anything," Jerry chimed in. "Well," Danny began, "to be continued next year." Okay, that was a story by Patrick.
Very good story.
I'm always happy. The great thing about when Patrick does a story is they're all different. I mean, you never know what the story's going to be.
He's got a creative mind. Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah.
And you give him a task and he just sits down and does it.
Yeah.
And he's happy to do it. And I appreciate that. And I'm not saying that our other listeners, maybe you don't have time, maybe you're super busy, maybe you just didn't get in the creative flow, and that's fine too, because I didn't either, to be honest. So I do have some
beet beer.
Beet beer. It's awesome.
Well, the whole purpose is just, for everybody to have a good Halloween and to be scared.
Yeah. So
we want people to be scared. We want to scare them. We want to spook them.
I want to spook you.
It's part of the celebration.
I'm going to ask you a would you rather question. We're not going to play the game.
Okay.
We're gonna just make up some questions. But before I do, I want to see if one of these questions is actually going to scare you to death.
To scare me to death?
Have you ever been scared to death?
What does that mean?
Clearly not, because you're still alive. But people use that phrase all the time.
Yeah.
You scared me to death.
Right.
You scared me half to death.
Right.
Whatever. Did you know that you can actually be scared to death?
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine so.
So the question...
I know that there have been people who have laughed themselves to death.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure you can be scared to death. And scaring, your body, your heart rate increases, your fear. And I mean, yeah, I think probably a lot more people are scared to death than you would think.
You would think so. And here's the thing is you can't actually prove it unless you have like a witness to say, I jumped out and went boo, and then he just dropped dead. And who's going to say I did that?
Yeah.
Right? But it can happen.
Yeah.
So humans can be scared to death. I have a few facts here I'm going to read to you.
All right.
In fact, any strong emotional reaction can trigger fatal amounts of a chemical.
That's what I was just saying.
You did. You said laughing to death.
Yeah, I think anything like that. Yeah, sure.
So it's adrenaline in the body. One of them is adrenaline.
Well, you're losing your breath. Your heart changes.
Yeah.
And fear. A lot of people die from fear.
Well, think about it.
I wouldn't say a lot, but I mean, people die from fear.
Yes, people die from fear.
Yeah.
People die from anxiety, which is part of fear. So, it happens very rarely, it says, but it can happen to anyone. The risk of death from fear or another strong emotion is greater for individuals with pre-existing heart conditions, obviously.
Yeah.
But people who are perfectly healthy in all other respects can fall victim. Like, you can just drop dead.
Yeah.
Being scared to death boils down to our autonomic response to a strong emotion such as fear. For fear-induced deaths, the demise starts with our fight or flight response, clearly, because what happens when your body, goes into that? It's a physical response to a perceived threat. This response is characterized by an increased heart rate, anxiety, that too, perspiration, and increased blood glucose levels. So how does our fight or flight instinct lead to death? To understand that, we have to understand what the nervous system is doing when it's stimulated, primarily in releasing hormones. Those hormones, which can be adrenaline or another chemical messenger, ready the body for action. The thing is, adrenaline and similar chemicals in large doses are toxic to all organs, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs. Scientists claim that what causes sudden death out of fear in particular is the chemicals damage to the heart, since this is the only organ that, upon being affected, could cause sudden death. So adrenaline opens calcium to the heart. With a lot of calcium going to the heart, the organ has trouble slowing down, which is something that can cause ventricular fibrillation, a specific type of abnormal heart rhythm. Irregular heartbeats prevent the organ from successfully pumping blood to the body and lead to sudden death unless treated immediately. High levels of adrenaline aren't caused only by fear. Other strong emotions can also incite a rush of adrenaline. For example, sporting events and sexual intercourse have been known to lead to adrenaline-induced deaths.
That's the way I want to die.
Fear or sex?
Sex.
You want to die while having sex?
Yeah.
Will you at least let her finish first?
Of course.
Okay.
I don't know that it matters, but
I mean, she could finish without you. It's not.
That's my point.
I get it. But yeah, you can physically die from fear.
Yeah.
So now we have a goal. We want to scare people.
Yeah.
To death. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a special Would You Rather.
Really?
Yeah, we're not
going to...
Scary
one? Scary Would You Rather.
Yes, we're not going to throw the stones. We're not going to...
Oh, that's right. It won't make a difference.
It won't make a difference because we're not going off a card. We made these things up.
We should, throw something scary.
We don't have, little skull dice or anything like that, do we?
Throw bones.
We have something like that on here. That's actually what they used to call dice.
Throw up.
No, let's not do that. Okay, so I have a question for you.
Okay.
So... Would you rather spend an entire night in a haunted house, allegedly haunted house?
Allegedly, so it may not be haunted. So
well, people say that they've experienced hauntings there. Okay.
All right.
You have no electricity. You have no phone. You have no radio, no television, no way of communication, and all the doors and windows are locked. You cannot get out.
Okay.
You're by yourself.
Yeah.
You might have a candle or two. That's fine.
Are there creatures in there? Do we know? Is there a bed? Do I have to sleep on the floor?
We don't know.
We don't know anything.
I mean, it's a whole house, so there's likely a bed.
Okay.
So you have to spend an entire night in this place by yourself.
All right.
Would you rather do that?
Or
be locked in a coffin?
No.
For an indefinite amount of time, less than 24 hours.
Haunted house.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not going to be in a coffin.
No?
No.
Why is that? Tell me.
You know me, I don't like to be in caves. I don't like being closed in stuff.
Okay, so you're going...
The house is fine. I mean, I'll stay in the house. I don't believe in haunted anyway. I mean, it would be creepy. And the thing is, so I would believe in a deranged lunatic before I would believe in a haunted thing.
I mean, I agree with you. I do.
So if I'm staying in a house like that, I'm wondering if just some crazy person is in the house that's going to try to do something to me. But I'm not worried about...
look like a ghost.
Yeah, I'm not worried about ghosts.
Okay.
I mean, somebody could have escaped from an institution or something.
I escaped. No, I didn't. Okay, so
you escaped
all right.
from Alaska.
I did. That's an institution in itself. All right, so you're going with the haunted house.
Yep.
You don't want to be locked in a coffin.
I would not do the coffin.
How long do you think you'd last in a coffin?
Not even 30 seconds.
Really?
I wouldn't allow the lid to go down.
Oh, okay. You're over it.
I would have to be sedated or something.
Oh, what if you woke up?
That would be the hard thing is if I now that's where I would just go crazy is if I woke up and then realized. And it's like a part of, there's a movie and I can't remember, but it's like you wake up and you're buried alive.
There's a part in Jacob's Ladder where he wakes up in a coffin.
Yeah.
Oh, freaky. All right. So that's your answer.
No, don't want to do it.
What question you got for me?
All right. So, I have this is going to be a little different.
Okay.
So we're not throwing the stone stuff and we're doing some different stuff. So mine's going to be a 3-parter. It's a multiple choice. You could pick A, B, or C.
All right.
So, all right. So kind of like mine, you're in a dark area. It could be a house, it could be a coffin. I don't know, but you're in a dark something room, black dark, completely dark. You can't see anything. No light, no nothing.
No nothing.
So you get a choice of things that crawl on you. So do you want?
God.
Yeah. Do you want A, insects?
Oh, what kind of insects?
Any kind of, or all.
Oh, okay.
Insects. Cockroaches could be. Those things from Raiders of the Lost Ark, whatever those were.
Bleh, hissing cockroaches.
Yeah. B, rodents.
Okay. Like rats.
Specifically rats. And are bats rodents? I think they are. Like rats and mice, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe some raccoons and possums even. I don't know.
Oh, those are big.
Actually, I'm not sure they're rodents.
Well, no, they're not. Possums are marsupials. They're the only marsupial in North America.
Yeah.
And raccoons are, I think, mammals.
They're either mammals or they might be marsupials too. They carry their...
No, they're not.
Don't they carry in a little pouch?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so...
or C...
Yeah?
Reptiles.
Ooh, like slithery things.
Snakes, lizards, just,
frogs.
Things. Yeah, maybe some slimy frogs or...
Toads.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't really have unless this is tough. And I have to pick one that I would go with.
You have to go with A, B, or C.
That I'd be okay with crawling on me.
In a dark area. I feel like maybe there should be a little bit of light because you need to be able to see what it is.
I think you could tell. I think you could probably tell.
So would you rather know or not know? I mean, would you rather just feel it or would you rather be able to see what it is?
I'd rather be able to see what it is so I could kill it.
Yeah.
And I say that.
And that's part of the rule. You can't kill it.
Oh, no, you didn't say that.
I just did. I added that.
That's not fair. Because I was going to go with A.
Okay.
Because, I'm one of those weird people who I think all life is beautiful, but I will squish a bug. Okay. So if there's bugs on me and I can just stomp around for hours and kill them all, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to stomp around and kill a bunch of rodents.
All right. Even if they're eating you?
I had a rat as a pet. I'm not going to
But if it's eating you?
Why would it be eating me?
It's hungry. It's crawling on you, eating you.
Oh, you didn't say eating me.
I just did.
Damn it. I still don't want to do the squishing thing. Okay. I don't
Or reptiles. That, like a snake feels like it's slimy, but it's not slimy.
They're not. I love the feel of snakes.
It's almost, I don't know what that stuff is, like metal.
I will hold a snake. I will let it lay on my neck. I will cuddle with a snake. That's fine. Is it venomous?
I don't know.
Well, shit. And I can't kill any of them.
I don't think you can kill them for 24 hours. They have to crawl on you.
I have to let them crawl on me. I can't even swipe them off of me?
No, you can swipe them off.
Okay.
If you can.
In that case, I'm going with rodents.
Okay. You'll take the rodents.
I'll take the rodents.
All right, here they come. Here are the rodents.
No!
Bring out the rodents.
No! Stop! It's not dark in here, so
I don't know which one I would pick. I don't like crawling things on me. Even things I'm not afraid of, I don't like them crawling on me.
It's a bad feeling.
Yeah.
There's actually a name for the psychiatric feeling of feeling bugs on you, and I can't remember what it is.
Okay.
Have you ever had that, though?
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I have.
Here's something I haven't had, which
What?
I kind of would like to have.
What?
And I don't know why. So this guy, I saw him on the internet. His name is Jonathan Ferguson.
Wow. Okay.
And Jonathan Ferguson has created a vampire killing kit.
Really?
And it looks really cool. So it's like a wooden box.
Is there a picture of him? I want to see what Jonathan looks like.
He looks kind of like what you think he should look like.
Yeah, he does. He's young.
All right. Yeah, he is. So the box, it's a wooden box. It's a really cool looking box.
Uh-huh.
It's got like velvet interior. So like a red velvet top and then like blue velvet on the bottom.
Of course.
And then all of the pieces inside, they're separated by wood. And I'm going to try to see let's see. There's a crucifix in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a holy book. And then there's 3 vials of something which I'm assuming are holy water.
Right.
Which was supposed to kill. There's a rosary.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are 4 wooden stakes and a mallet.
Of course, for the, stake through the heart thing.
That's correct. And then there's a gun.
With silver bullets?
I'm assuming that's what it is.
Was silver bullets only werewolves, or is that vampires too?
I think it's, I've heard it's just werewolves. I don't know.
Okay.
And then there's like little, I don't know what that's for. Little pliers or something it looks like.
To rip out their fangs.
Or maybe. Could be. Maybe it has something to do with loading the gun. Oh, let's see. Pistol alongside a range of other items. Okay. But there you go. So I think you can order from that guy. You can get, I don't know if all of the pieces come with it, though.
So I've seen images of vampire killing kits from like over 100 years ago, right? When people actually believed in this. And it may have even been 200-300 years ago or longer. I don't know. My history is horrible. But looking at that, I wonder how much it differs from today's vampire killing kit.
I don't know. Probably all these materials look realistic. Now I'm reading through this, and I'm getting the feeling now that this guy, this Jonathan Ferguson, it doesn't really say, but his kit. I feel like I don't know if he's selling it. I think he's just showing it.
Oh, okay. It's not for sale then.
He's the keeper of firearms.
At?
So I don't know. I don't know whether he's selling them. He looks like because he's wearing white gloves, like he doesn't want to touch the stuff, and the stuff looks old to me.
Okay.
So maybe he's got his own kit or something. But anyway.
Maybe he found it.
Yeah.
Like dug it up somewhere.
But there you go.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder. There's no garlic in there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
But garlic doesn't kill vampires. It just repels them.
Well, let's find out. So I did a little research. And, what did I do with my research? Okay, here it is. So this is weird because this is how to kill a vampire. And it's on National Geographic's website.
National Geographic
what
is telling you
What the heck is National Geographic trying to tell us how to kill a vampire for?
I don't know.
Anyway, so these are the ways that you're supposed to be able to kill a vampire.
Okay.
Number 1, garlic.
That is supposed to kill?
It says kill. All right. The traditional belief that garlic odor deters vampires may have originated with the disease rabies.
Okay, so yes, I understand that. Rabies, people or animals that suffer from rabies don't like strong odors.
Right. And there are other things about the qualities of a vampire that they think are tied in with rabies. So, because years ago they thought like mental illness was demon possession.
Right.
And so maybe somebody got rabies and they thought they were vampires because they're biting people.
Yeah.
They're foaming at the mouth, they're bleeding, and they're biting people because they have rabies.
They're vomiting up blood.
And so they think, I guess superstitious, ignorant people think, oh, he's turned into a crazy vampire.
And didn't I read somewhere where like they pull their lips back on their teeth?
Well, that's what happens with rabies, right?
Oh, yeah. So they're baring their teeth, they're frothing, they're vomiting, there's blood. So
really, vampires might just be people with rabies.
With rabies.
Yep.
Wow.
All right. Number 2, mirrors and sunlight are supposed to. I don't know. Some of these I think are just deterrents, but this is saying how to kill them. I would say how to kill them or slow them down.
Okay.
And also they say that rabies may also harbor the roots of the vampire fear of mirrors. Strong odors or visual stimuli trigger the spasms in the face and vocal muscles of those with rabies. So it makes sense that light that's being reflected off of the mirror and even sunlight
would do something wacky.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have rabies.
So you would not want to look at it.
That's true.
Okay.
Number 3, crucifix and holy water, which have absolutely nothing to do with rabies.
Nothing.
But any sort of religious symbol might deter a vampire.
Does it say which religion?
No, but that's what I was going to say. I wonder if Muslim, are there Muslim vampires? I don't know. If you're Muslim and you can send us an email and let us know. But if it is, what are the
would you put a Star of David up to like
Jewish vampires? I guess. A menorah. I don't know what all the religious symbols would be. What if you're a satanic vampire, which is it seems like that's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's just like there are a lot of different religions. So,
like if you were Jewish, would you just pelt them with dreidels or like?
You could. I'm trying to figure out how, like, what all is every religious thing, because that's almost everything in the world.
Yeah, there are like. Would you hit him over the head with a golden cow? Or something.
I don't know.
That's ridiculous. Any religious symbol.
Yeah.
That's so vague.
All right. Number 5, decapitate and burn. That's my favorite way to kill a vampire. Chop off his head and set him on fire.
Do it.
All right. Number 6, a brick, stone, or vine between the teeth. Did you know about this?
Brick, stone.
A brick, stone, or vine between the teeth.
Okay. Brick, stone, or vine.
Between the teeth.
Between the teeth. How are you going to get a brick between somebody's teeth?
I have no idea.
Interesting.
For insights on this method, we turn to forensic anthropologist Matteo Borini. Venice during the plague years. What does that mean?
The plague years.
Venice during the plague years, and there's a misprint or something. An excavated skull labeled ID6. When the Black Death first passed through Europe, in 14th century, the lethal scourge killed fully 75% of Venice's population.
Yeah.
Subsequent outbreaks include, and you know what? They weren't wearing masks.
Nope,
that's the problem.
They weren't wearing masks.
Including one in 1576 and 1577 that likely killed ID 6, ravaged the city again over 2 centuries that followed. Brought to horrific... Oh, what does this have to do...
with vampires?
With the vampire. I'm reading ahead here.
The thing, though, they didn't wear masks back then because they didn't know what germs were. They didn't know what viruses were.
All right, so what they're saying is putting a brick, a stone, or a vine in the teeth keeps them from biting.
Oh, I got you.
That's what that is.
Between the canines.
Just between them in the mouth. Just like, the cowboys.
Like if someone's having a seizure and you stick something in their mouth so they can't bite their tongue.
Because, again, rabies or whatever it was, it's like an automatic reaction.
It makes you clench. Yeah.
It's like meth.
Yeah, that makes you clench too. Yeah. I know from experience.
And you just stick a stone with something in there, like even a stick, I guess.
Yeah.
Something they can't bite through.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So, and that's it. National Geographic gives us 6 ways to kill a vampire. I'm pretty sure one of those ways you can do.
I don't know if showing a mirror to a vampire is going to kill him.
I don't know. Now, let me ask you this: do you believe in bats that turn into vampires? Do you believe in that?
No, I don't.
Are you sure?
I don't believe in bats that turn into, like, do you mean that, like, morph into, like, Dracula? Is that what you're talking
a vampire.
about?
Like a if they're like, we should start with a more simple question. Do you believe in vampires?
I believe that some people like to drink blood.
But you don't think they have magical powers and they come back from the dead, or they live?
No, and they don't glitter. There's no glittery vampires.
Okay. So, but there are some people who believe that vampires or people who are vampires, they're actually vampires, and people believe vampire bats have like vampirish
superpowers
stuff. Well, I have some amazing facts about vampire bats I'm going to read to you.
What you got?
Vampire bats tend to live in colonies in almost completely dark places such as caves, old wells, hollow trees, and buildings.
Yep.
Which probably play into the whole idea of vampirism. They're in the dark.
In the dark. Yeah. They don't like the sunlight.
These creatures are nocturnal and most active in the early night, like all vampires.
Of course.
Vampire bats roost alone in small groups or in colonies of thousands. In other words, in every situation.
They're everywhere.
That's right. They're sometimes alone, sometimes in colonies of thousands. The basic social structure of roosting bats is made of harems.
Ooh.
Kind of want to be a bat.
No, you don't.
These are composed of females and their offspring and a few adult males known as resident males.
You really want to be a bat?
Kind of. And a separate group of males known as non-resident males. I don't know why you need all the males. Female vampire bats form associations with one another that can last for many years.
Wow.
Kind of like church ladies.
Yeah.
Church bats.
Church bats.
Vampire bats are believed to be the only species of bats in the world to adopt another young bat if something happens to the bat mother.
Oh, sweet.
It's National Adopt-A-Bat Day.
I like it. Let's do it.
They know no one else wants the little guys. They are very clean animals that frequently groom themselves as well as other bats. Did you know that?
Yep.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I thought they were called like mites and lice and
no, they're
nastiness.
meticulous. They're meticulous. I mean, they might have fleas and stuff, but they are meticulous about trying to stay clean.
Vampire bats generally fly about 1 meter off the ground. I didn't know that. I thought they were way, way up there.
They can be, but maybe that's just the general. I don't know.
Like the legendary monster from which they get their name, these small mammals drink the blood of other animals for survival. Now, I read that they don't drink the blood. They lick the blood.
They lick it. Okay, but that's how they drink. Like they don't, like, chew in and then start sucking blood out of your arteries. It's not like that. They cause an injury. Like, they will bite you. Or find an injury. And then they'll lick up the fresh blood.
Okay. They feed on blood from sleeping cows, pigs, horses, and birds. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine waking up and there's a bat sucking your blood?
And there's nothing you can do about it because you can't reach them.
And you're hypnotized because they got that gaze. You know?
That's right, yeah. And they're all glittery.
Mm-hmm. Though uncommon, vampire bats occasionally bite humans for blood.
Yeah, they will.
They did me last night. Vampire bats have such good eyesight that they may be able to see a cow from a distance of 130 meters.
Wow. Wow.
I almost said something really bad. Anyway, they don't remove enough blood to harm the animal, but their bites can cause nasty infections and diseases.
Yes, like rabies.
Rabies. And we're back.
We're back to the rabies.
The vampire. Unlike some other species of bats, vampire bats can walk, run, and jump.
They can jump?
Apparently.
Like, have you ever seen a hopping bat?
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen a lot of bats, by the way. They have very strong hind legs and a special thumb that helps them take off after feeding and hitchhike to California.
Special thumb, man.
Right.
Special thumb.
Each night, vampire bats drink about half of their body weight in blood. If they can't find blood for 2 nights in a row, they will die.
Wow.
And then everybody drinks their blood.
Yeah.
Luckily, female bats can be generous. Well-fed bats will often regurgitate blood to share with others in exchange for the grooming.
I mean, if you're super full...
Are you hungry? Would you like me to regurgitate some blood?
Right. It's like if you're super full and you just want a good bath and you want somebody else to wash you, here, let me vomit in your mouth and you give me a bath.
Ooh,
done. Done and done. You get to eat, I get clean, we're good.
Vampire bats can actually be quite tame and even friendly to humans. Hi, bat. How are you?
Hi, they'd be like, hey, Rick, how's it going?
How about...
Well, they hop along. Would you like some blood?
Owls, eagles, and hawks are some of the vampire bat's main predators.
Yeah. Because they're tiny. They're little.
So we put a bat house in our yard, and so far no bats had ever come to it. But we also have hawks and stuff around.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't.
I was thinking about putting a bat house up on the back of the house.
Yeah.
And we have 2 resident owls, and they're big.
Yep.
And we have at least 4 resident hawks.
They'll take them.
And they will eat those bats. Now, I do see, when I go out at dusk especially, is when I see bats flying over. So I know they're there in the neighborhood. They're just running for their lives at this point.
Rather than sucking blood, vampire bats make a small cut with their teeth and then lap up the flowing blood with their tongues. So
told you, they don't suck
totally dispute what they say earlier in this thing.
No, did they say they suck blood earlier?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was saying that they don't, and then now they come back and they change it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, these bats are so light and agile that they're sometimes able to drink blood from an animal for more than 30 minutes without it waking up.
Ooh. I mean, when's the last time... Never mind. I was going to say...
All right.
Never mind.
All right, there you go. That's vampire bats for you.
They're so cute, too, really.
No, I don't think so. I've always thought bats are ugly.
What about them is ugly to you?
Just, they're scary. They're scary ugly.
They're not scary.
They look like walking rabies.
What? I tell you what.
Flying rabies.
Flying rabies. And hopping, apparently. They can jump.
Flying and hopping rabies.
Flying and hopping. I have a couple of stories.
Okay.
So what we need right now is a campfire. Unfortunately, the fire downstairs...
We have some incense.
...is roaring. And all we have up here is a fake flame light and some incense. Smells kind of like a campfire. Not so much. But I have a couple stories where I'm going to try and scare you, not to death. And there's no bats. All right. So in this story I'm going to read for you, the writer and editor is a man named by the name of Brad Culp. I do not own this story. He wrote it. It's on the internet. If I can find it on the internet, I can read it there. When Brad Culp was a student at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, there was a rumor that the town was one of the most haunted places in America. When Culp started on an on-campus magazine, he couldn't wait to write about several of the area's most famous phantoms. Not long after his story published, though, he kept finding himself thinking about one ghost in particular, the ghost of Oxford Milford Road. As the story goes, many decades ago, probably sometime in the 1940s, there was a young man courting a young woman in a rural part of town. Because the woman's parents didn't approve of the match, each night he visited under the cover of darkness. After her parents went to bed, the young woman would sneak out of her farmhouse and flash the lights on her parents' car 3 times. Then her young suitor would ride his motorcycle down the road. One night, he took the turn right before her house a little too sharp. The motorcycle went one way, he went the other. His injuries were so severe that he did not survive. Rumor has it, however, that his love-struck ghost still haunts this stretch of Milford Road. Curious, Culp, the writer, his girlfriend, who's now his wife, and a friend decided to head out there one night to see if they could verify the tale. His girlfriend was worried she'd be completely freaked out. Culp says she believes more in this stuff than I do. But he was mostly concerned that his suspicions that none of this was actually true would be confirmed. On this particular night, as Culp passed the abandoned farm, an idea came to him and he pitched it to his girlfriend. How could she not say yes? Though reluctant, she relented and Culp turned a short way into the farmhouse driveway. He killed the engine and flashed his lights 3 times. No joke, there was a single headlight that appeared 3/4 a mile down the road, Culp says. You saw it start to come, going pretty slow. It kept coming and coming. My wife was freaking out. It was coming closer and closer. As a collision seemed imminent, Culp turned his car lights on. He expected to see a kid on a bike bailing out from his prank now that he'd been caught, but there's nothing there. The light is just gone, he says. They get out of the car. They walked around trying to figure out what it was they could have seen. To this day, we still talk about it. I saw something I cannot explain, he says. If you get him and his wife around a campfire, they'll swear up and down that the story is true. And if you're ever in Oxford, Ohio, consider parking just for a few minutes on Oxford-Milford Road at night to test your own nerve. What was that?
It was a scream, I think.
Do you believe in stuff like that?
I mean, what believe in what? I mean, it doesn't say anything happened, and that's...
They saw a light.
I know. Yes, I believe in lights. Okay. I saw one today. Actually,
there's one right there.
I believe I see one. So, yeah, all of that kind of stuff to me is just people thinking they see something or feel something or smell something or whatever.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the biggest insults to my intelligence are these ghost shows that are on TV. I can't stand it.
Like the paranormal ghost hunters.
It's just like when you remember when you were in school and like somebody was creeping out, and there's always this one kid that would go, ah! Just to scare everybody.
Yes.
Because that kid was the most scared of everybody. And he was so afraid he was going to be shown to be scared. So he has to pretend like he's not and make the noise to scare everybody else.
Like all bullies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what the ghost shows do. I just feel like that they do all of these little things to try to scare people.
Yeah.
And there's never anything there.
So like if we were in a dark house or something and we were exploring knowing that there was supposedly some hauntings going on and I was in front of you and I turned around and went, run! Like just to freak you out. I mean, you don't know what I'm saying run for. There could be an axe murderer there.
No, I know, but there
could be, whatever. And that's not cool. Like if you're just doing that to scare somebody, like I said earlier, I could have scared you to death.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's all those things are.
I agree.
And I just think people, what is that? I saw a shadow, and that's all of those ghost shows do. And if there was an actual ghost, an actual something there,
entity of some kind,
no one would ever let it go. I mean, they would send teams of scientists to study it and all. And instead, these people walk in and they hear something, then they go home and leave, and then
right,
and
they don't come up with any way to try and contain and study and whatnot. I tell you, I'm a big believer in energy, obviously, because it's everywhere, right? So I believe that if something horrific happens and if there's a big, release of emotion or anger, which is an emotion, or energy or something like that, I believe it might leave traces of a weird feeling. But I don't think that there are actually, people who are dead out there like trying to get your attention and poke at you.
Is that all they want?
They just want to poke at you.
I just needed some attention.
I'm lonely.
Yeah, that's all.
I'm all alone. Yeah. No, I don't think that's it. Okay. I got one more for you though.
Well, we just told everybody we don't believe it. So,
but this one might be better.
All right, maybe I'll believe this one.
Okay. So throughout Latin America, you'll hear variations of the story of La Llanura, or the Wailing Woman. Sometimes she's lost her husband, sometimes she's lost her children, sometimes it's both. But in La Parva, a ski spot in the Chilean Indies, the wailing woman is named Lola, and everyone in the area swears they knew her before she died. A local restaurant owner said he dated her, adding that the ski patroller he heard the story from was pointed at the exact hut. Sorry. the person he heard it from pointed at the exact hut where this tale supposedly takes place.
I thought your soul got stolen from you.
It did. It was like scary for a second. The story starts on a nice day in a peak ski season. Lola and her young son planned to spend the day on the slopes. As can happen in the Andes, a thick fog rose up from the valley, which often precedes the arrival of a real storm. The clouds enveloped the two as they were making their way down from the top of the mountain, and they lost contact with one another. Desperate to find her son, Lola began screaming his name as she ran through the thick fog. Unable to see clearly, though, she stumbled down a steep slope and began sliding towards a rocky embankment. By chance, a local lift operator who was returning to his cabin came across her body. He was afraid she was dead, but on closer inspection, he found she was still alive, just barely. Her body was covered in lacerations from the sharp rocks, and the only word she said in the faintest whisper was her son's name. The lift operator worked to carefully pull her body to his cabin, which was just up the hill. He bandaged her cuts as best he could and then ran to fetch the doctor. Together, the doctor and the lift operator made their way back to his hut, the fog hanging thickly in the air. When they arrived, though, the bed was empty. Just the bloody sheets remained. Neither the woman nor her son were ever found, but locals report hearing her wail for her child whenever they're near that lift operator's cabin. And here's the thing. The person telling the story doesn't believe in ghosts. Something, however, changes when he arrives in Chile each winter. Maybe it's the fact that from La Parva, you can see up to Cerro El Plomo, which is an Incan child sacrifice site. Maybe it's because this person has simply read so many magical realism books. But sitting alone in his cabin in the Andes with the wind whipping and the candles flickering, he swears that every now and then he just can't tell if what he's hearing is a woman or the wind. That's it.
I think I mentioned last year when we did our show,
yeah,
that I'm not a believer in UFOs.
Right.
I saw a UFO.
You what? I
saw a UFO.
When?
Well, it's been a few years ago, but I don't have any explanation for it.
What did you see?
I described it. It was I was driving through basically like a rural farm community, and there were no cars around.
Right.
There were no lights anywhere.
Right.
It was totally dark except there was a moon, a really bright moon, so I could see the land really plain. There was no lights from billboards or anything like that. I was just out in this blue lit farmland driving down the road, and then over the horizon, just like almost like a fireworks, will shoot up into the air. It was almost like that, but it was a big ball of light, just like a sphere of light. It just kind of went,
and it just kept going up,
just rising up from the ground,
straight up.
At first, I thought it was a firework, but it just kind of came from over the or under the horizon, I guess.
Yeah.
Behind a mountain, I don't know.
Sure.
It just kind of and just went up into the air, and I watched it. I'm driving, but then I just kind of watched it go up, and I in the back of my mind I thought, oh, in a second I'm going to know what this is.
Sure.
And it just it went up, and then it right above the interstate where I'm driving, it stopped.
Like
completely
dead
stopped right above me. And I'm looking at it, and I drive right underneath it.
How high up was it?
I don't know.
Like as high as an airplane or lower than that?
Lower than an airplane, but it wasn't like it wasn't close to me, but it was up in the air.
Yeah.
Like it could be a balloon or
sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
But it was perfectly round. And I drove right underneath it. I just looked at it as it went. As I went under it, and it disappeared.
And could you see it in your rear view after you passed under it?
No. Nope.
Interesting.
And I remember thinking, what the hell was it? Mm-hmm. And I just thought there has to be an explanation for that. And the first thing I wanted to know, well, I think when I got the opportunity to go home, I looked up whether anybody else in the area had seen a UFO.
Right.
I wanted to know if...
Now, you said you were pretty rural, though.
Very rural.
Okay.
There was a lot of farmland around, but I couldn't find anything from anyone.
You were the only person, as far as you know, that saw it.
It was so weird.
That is very weird.
I still, to this day, I don't believe in UFOs, but I know I saw
you
something.
Saw something.
But I don't know what it is. And that is the definition of UFO, by the way.
Right.
It's an unidentified
something
plane.
I saw that I don't know.
But I thought, you know, sometimes you'll pass by a billboard or somebody in your, behind you will have their lights on and it'll reflect in your windshield.
Yes.
And I thought, well, it could be that. But there was nothing.
Nobody
no other light around me.
Nobody around you.
And from where it originated and where it ended up, there's no explanation.
The thing about UFOs particularly, because, you know, I am kind of a believer.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you is, you know, I don't believe all stories because not everybody's telling the truth. Okay. That's a given. But I, you know, the stories that you hear where certain people that have no connection to each other whatsoever, especially like, let's use the instance of the lights that were over the White House. I don't remember when it was a while back. You got people from all different walks of life from all over the city saying they saw it and reporting it, like calling the police and calling, you know, whatever, and reporting that these lights were over the White House.
Sure.
Or maybe the Capitol building. I don't remember which it was. And they didn't know each other. They didn't make this story up. You know, they all saw something. And, you know, most of the descriptions were really similar.
Yeah.
So, and then they even sent fighter jets up to go see what it was because it was there long enough.
Right.
They saw it too. So you tell me what that is.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing with religious experience. I mean, several people will have the same type of experience and they say this is true because of that. They're, you know, the story of the mass group who saw an image of Mary. And you know, I don't know. Do you believe that? Do you believe that Mary appeared? I mean, thousands of people said they saw her.
Well, the thing is I think most people saw a white woman. I don't think Mary was white.
Well, it was in like Peru or Brazil or something. I'm not sure she was white.
Oh, okay.
But you know, who knows? I think there's a such thing as, I won't say mass hypnosis, but kind of that. I think.
But these people had no time to discuss. Like they called from different parts of the city saying there's something happening right now.
I mean, that again, that is a UFO. There's something there, unidentified.
They just couldn't explain what it was.
Who knows what it is?
You never know. It could have just been weird lights.
All right. We should talk about the beer and stop our Halloween podcast. We do have one more thing that we're going to do.
Okay.
On the Halloween podcast.
What's that?
Something I wanted to do. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you've probably heard this story, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to play it at the end of the podcast for the new people or the people who haven't heard it for a long time. It's an old story that we did, but it's one of my favorite stories. I actually wrote it, but Sherry does the reading of it, and it's a haunted story, and it's one of my favorite performances that you have done.
Really?
It's still my favorite.
Thank you.
And so I always have to listen to it every year.
You coached me a lot on that one.
And so I'm going to play it so everybody else can enjoy it this year. We'll play that at the very end. It's a haunted story called Fergus McDuff.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
that was a fun one.
Let's talk about the beer.
Okay, so again, just to remind you, we're drinking Bloodmoon, and it's by Blue Tarp Brewing in Decatur, here in Georgia. And it is a wheat ale brewed with bergamot and beets.
Okay.
It's very pink.
Very
and they
pink.
try to make it look like blood.
Yes.
And the thing is that here's my opinion. People use beets to make things red. Beets are pink.
Yeah.
They're not red. And that's just like people say ruby red. Rubies are pink. They're not red.
Yeah, it's very much a ruby color.
Yeah.
And kind of a wine color in a way.
Very much. It looks like a Pinot, like a light Pinot, actually. Pinot
Doesn't
Noir.
taste like that. Well, I'll tell you my opinion. I did. It's not my kind of beer. I didn't particularly like it. I'm going to give it a 3 just because the taste is not my favorite, but I think the beet flavor or the earthiness, the presence of the beet in it, kind of killed some of the bitterness.
Yes.
Potential bitterness.
Yeah.
That was in there. And so because of that, I'm going to lift it just a little bit and I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay. Now, the thing about beets is personally, I love beet juice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Beets are, inherently, they're earthy flavored. Yes. They taste like dirt. Okay. But they also taste, the redder the veggie or whatever, the more sugar that's in it. So beets are also inherently sweet. And I can get some of that. Now, it is hiding some serious bitterness in this beer because it gets you in the back of the throat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it wasn't for that, I think it'd be much bitter.
Very much.
Much more than it is. More
than most wheat beers. It feels like an IPA to me. And I don't think that they're calling it what it really is.
No, I thought the same thing. I felt like it's very much an IPA.
Yeah.
Seems like it. Tastes like it.
And I get none of the bergamot, so why even put it on the can? I literally don't taste, and I love bergamot. I was looking forward to it, and I don't get any of it.
Okay.
I'm going to give it 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
All right.
It's pretty to look at.
Yeah, very much.
But I'm probably not going to buy it. Now, that doesn't mean that you all won't love it. If you like a semi-mild IPA or like a mid-range IPA and you're into like the earthiness of beets, you'll probably love it.
Okay. All right, excellent. Hey everybody, thanks for spending your Halloween with us. And we're going to keep going. This is the holiday season. We got more stuff coming up. But if you listen to the podcast, if you want to talk about something we talked about, tell us what the scariest thing you've ever seen. Or maybe you don't believe in something that you actually experienced.
Yeah.
You can send us your story at thisepicdisaster@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. You can send stuff there to us. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
Sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're also on YouTube, where every time we post something, we get some weird Russian message.
Have you ever tried to translate it?
No, it's some kind of bot thing. It's just like as soon as it posts, they put something on there, and it's some weird thing. I don't know. And then I always go to try to erase it.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Weird.
I don't know what it is.
That's very weird.
Somebody knows.
You're being spied on.
I know.
Ew.
But anyway, so happy trick or treating, everyone. If you're
be safe. Always check your kids' candy before you let them eat it.
And always send any Reese's stuff you get to me.
But check it first. Because he'll just eat it. Yeah. Also, look out. And I know this is not really a thing. A lot of people who spend money on edibles aren't about to put them in some kids' bags. But some people think it's funny. So before your kids eat those jellies, just make sure the package doesn't say anything about THC on it.
Did you see that story about the teacher who gave her kids reward candy and it turned out to be edibles from her home that she didn't know about?
What?
Yeah.
I did not know
She got in trouble, big trouble.
Oh, I bet.
Lost her job and everything.
I bet she got criminal activity too going on.
Totally.
Because that's providing narcotics to a minor.
Yeah, don't do that.
No.
But the Reese's and your edibles you can send to us. We have ways to either do something with it or destroy them. We will destroy them.
You know what though? Don't send edibles in the mail because you'll go to jail. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. Happy Halloween.
Yes. Happy Halloween. Be safe. We will talk to you next Monday.
Yes.
And hang around and listen to Fergus McDuff.
It's a good story.
For as long as I can remember, the name Fergus McDuff has been a part of my consciousness. When I was a child, my parents used the name as a threat or a motivation for correction. If you don't clean your plate, Fergus McDuff will get you. Clean your room or Fergus McDuff will find you in the night. As kids, we imagined Fergus McDuff lived under our beds, his long, dirty fingers grasping for our ankles every time we went to turn in for the night. Most of the time, we would run to our beds and take a long dive into the safety of the mattress, relieved we avoided another murderous, grasping attempt by old Fergus McDuff. The reality was that Fergus McDuff didn't live under our beds, but rather in an old shack a block from the abandoned gas station 1/4 of a mile from our house. Or at least that's what all the kids at school said. We were all very aware of the dilapidated Fergus McDuff house that sat in the middle of the overgrown plot of land we had to pass when we walked down to the ball field. People would tell stories about seeing Fergus McDuff standing in the shadows of his porch, watching all of us kids playing across the street. Some people said they saw him clutching a butcher knife. Ginny Blair said she saw him holding a chainsaw. Troy Bolin claimed he once crept up the weedy pathway to Fergus McDuff's door, only to find him sitting on the porch, pulling feathers off of a bloody chicken. No matter the variety of stories, one detail was always consistent. Everybody claimed they saw old Fergus McDuff wearing a dress. Why that old man would wear a dress, I couldn't imagine, and I'm not sure why, but that was the thing about him that creeped me out the most. In 6th grade, my best friend was Dewey Milk. Yes, that was his real name, and no, you couldn't come up with a new name joke that Dewey hadn't heard a million times before. For 3 or 4 years, Dewey Milk and I were inseparable. We always pretended we were Mulder and Scully, only in our fantasy world I was Mulder, and Dewey always wanted to be Agent Scully. He would always say it was because of his red hair, but I knew he had more personal reasons. Dewey Milk and I would travel the neighborhood investigating all rumors of paranormal activity. It was usually just blowing the lid off of crazy tales we heard around town, like Mr. Stallings' possessed cat, or the space alien someone said the barriers were hiding in their dairy barn. We never really found anything, of course, but we thought we were making some sort of a difference in the safety of the neighborhood, and it was all just innocent fun. Innocent, that is, until one day when Dewey Milk suggested we climb the back fence of the abandoned gas station, crawl through the weeds, and get our own view of Fergus McDuff. Sometimes in life you do things that you would normally find so terrifying, you just have to shut your mind off and do it. Like pulling off an old Band-Aid. Don't think about it, just do it. That's how I felt about Dewey Milk's suggestion. I said yes, without thinking too much about it, and I told him we should do it immediately, since it was starting to get dark, and I knew in a few more minutes my mom would be calling me in for dinner. But really, I wanted to get moving before I talked myself out of it. We quickly scaled the gas station fence and found ourselves on our stomachs in 5-foot weeds. The sky was that deep indigo glow which happens right before everything goes completely black dark. Dewey Milk was right next to me, and I was sure he would be able to hear the thumping of my heart if it wasn't for the pulsing screams of the cicadas. We laid there for what seemed like 2 hours. I wasn't exactly sure what we were looking for as we stared at the silhouette of the old shack. "I think I see him," Dewey Milk said in a low whisper that still scared the shit out of me. "Where?" I asked. I couldn't see anything but black. "Right there in the middle," Dewey Milk said. "See, it's a window. You can see a little orange glow coming from it." I stared at the scraggly black building for a few moments. I had been looking at the remaining light from the sky, but when I let my eyes adjust to the blackness of the old shack, I could also see a glow coming from what looked like a window. It was the first time I really thought about what we were doing, and at that moment I realized I didn't want to. "We gotta go back, Dewey," I said. "My mom's gonna bust my ass." "It's too late, Mulder," Dewey said. "We're in this too deep." Dewey Milk was right. We were engaged. It was too late to abort the mission. And before I could agree with him, I heard a whimper come from him, and then a low, gurgling, choking sound. And before I could ask if he was okay, I felt cold, leathery fingers grab at the shirt at the back of my neck and pull tight. I couldn't tell what was happening, but I could feel my entire body being lifted from the ground. I looked over at Dewey and could barely see his face as he looked behind me. I knew from the panic on his face that the bony fingers that had me in their grasp belonged to none other than Fergus McDuff. The next few minutes moved super fast. I don't remember moving from the cover of the weeds to inside the old shack, but in the blink of an eye, there we were, sitting in front of a small, soot-covered fireplace in what I assumed was Fergus McDuff's living room. It was difficult to really determine where we were, though. In every inch of the house was piled boxes and books and paper, trash and mounds of shit. How anyone could live in that environment, I don't know. It smelled like old water, old food, and dead animals. No telling how many bodies of mice, rats, possums, raccoons, and who knows what else were rotting under the piles of garbage. It was sometimes difficult to tell if we were indoors or out. I guess I'm still not sure. I looked at Dewey Milk sitting next to me and noticed he too was scanning the contents of the room while at the same time trying to figure out if there might be some miracle way of darting out of the room. I could see the silhouette of Fergus McDuff sitting in a chair in the dark. I could hear the clunking of metal, which I eventually recognized as the sound of a spoon in a can. Was Fergus McDuff eating while holding us prisoner? After a few minutes, an empty can of corned beef hash flung out of the darkness and hit me on the bottom of my shoe. I heard a hacking cough in the middle of the blackness, the crinkling of paper, and chewing noises. Dewey Milk reached over and touched me on the knee and pointed towards the fireplace. On the mantel, I could see 20 or 30 little handmade dolls lined up in a row. They were crudely made, but each one had its own distinct look. Skinny dolls, fat dolls, boys with glasses, girls with braces. There was even a doll in a wheelchair. Just a lot of different dolls. I looked at Dewey Milk and he shrugged. I knew what he was thinking. What would this creepy old man be doing with all of these dolls? I was thinking something else. Why did Fergus McDuff bring us here? And what was he going to do with us? After about 45 minutes sitting on the dirt floor in front of the fireplace, I had had enough. Can we go home? I asked. My mom and dad are going to be worried and they're going to start looking for me. I waited for a response from the dark and heard only a guttural noise, which I could make out to be Fergus McDuff clearing his throat or laughing at me. Jenny, Dewey Milk whispered. Jenny, I whispered back. Dewey Milk pointed at one of the dolls on the mantel. It was a doll with curly brown hair and big wire glasses, almost as big as her entire face. He was right. The doll looked like Jenny Blair. In fact, I suddenly recognized another doll. The one with braces had to be Carol Thornton. And there was Ray Beale. Johnny Brooks was there. Renee Kincaid, and the wheelchair doll was definitely Kimmy Morgan. Dewey and I looked at each other with wide eyes. We both recognized our entire class there on top of Fergus McDuff's fireplace. I could feel tears pooling in my eyes. I was terrified and I wanted to get out of that creepy house. I scanned the room for an exit opportunity. It was hard to see anything through the piles of trash, but I did notice an open door in a room across from the living room. That was my chance. I caught Dewey Milk's eyes and subtly ran a pointed finger across the floor toward the open door. I counted in my mind, ready to dash toward freedom. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Suddenly a large pile of trash moved in front of me and blocked the open door. No, it wasn't a pile of trash after all. It was Fergus McDuff. The glow from the fire let me see Fergus for the first time. He was like a mountain. His hair and beard looked like the weeds we hid in outside his house. His face was wrinkled and looked like it was made of an old horse saddle. A wet stream of tobacco juice ran down the corner of his mouth. He reached over my head, and for the first time, I noticed the dress everyone talked about was an old kilt, like the one I saw in a book about Scotland at the school library. Only this one looked like it hadn't been washed in 100 years. I looked up at Fergus McDuff as he grasped for a doll on the mantel. Holding his arm at 90-degree angle, he danced the doll over his arm and made squeaky noises. The doll was chubby with bright curly red hair. I immediately recognized it as the doll version of Dewey Milk. Fergus McDuff cackled with a phlegmy laugh. He was obviously highly entertained at his puppet show. He slowly handed the doll to Dewey Milk, but when Dewey reached out to take it, Fergus McDuff quickly tossed it into the fire, where it instantly ignited into a ball of flame. Again, Fergus McDuff laughed with an even bigger cackle of phlegm. I scanned the fireplace for my doll. I knew it was the next star of Fergus McDuff's show. I was a lanky girl with a short bob hairstyle and tomboy clothes. But none of the dolls looked anything close to me. It didn't make sense to me. Why would everyone else in our class be there on his fireplace mantel in doll form, but not me? I turned to look at Fergus McDuff, and he stared down at me like he knew what I was thinking. His bony fingers moved down between his legs. He fondled around the old leather pouch on the front of his kilt until he opened it. He reached inside and pulled out a crushed, misshapen doll. He ran his fingers over the doll a bit until it smoothed out some, and then he handed the doll to me. He started laughing the biggest laugh yet and turned and walked into the dark part of his house and closed a door. Dewey Milk and I immediately ran to the door and kept running as fast as we could toward my house, the laughter of Fergus McDuff fading into his soft echo behind us. When morning came, I found myself questioning whether my experience with Fergus McDuff the night before was real or a dream. I wanted to ask Dewey Milk, but his mom said he went with his grandparents to a church function. My dad was sitting at the breakfast table reading the paper and drinking a cup of coffee. I asked him what he knew about Fergus McDuff. "Fergus McDuff?" he asked, surprised. "Well, honey, I think you're old enough now to know the truth about Fergus McDuff. There's no real Fergus McDuff. I mean, there was a Fergus McDuff a long time ago. He was a custodian at the school you go to, but somebody said he was inappropriately, having communications with some of the kids. He was fired and he just went away by himself. Everyone started using his name as kind of a boogeyman, you know. Last one to the porch will be killed by Fergus McDuff. It started out as something funny, but I guess it just became silly. Your mom and I always did it in a joking way. I don't know, maybe it went too far. Anyway, old Fergus McDuff died 10 years before you were born, so there's no way he's ever going to get you." I never talked to my parents about the night Dewey Milk and I spent in Fergus McDuff's creepy living room. It was a secret Dewey and I locked away in our own minds. We never even discussed it ourselves. Even though we were so close, eventually we did drift apart. Dewey's parents moved to Montana, and we wrote each other letters for about a year, but that stopped eventually. There was no email or Facebook then, so it was easy to just gradually lose touch. The last time I heard from Dewey Milk was 5 years ago after my husband Alan and our son Daniel drowned in a boat accident while on a fishing trip. Dewey heard about it from his sister, and he called me to tell me how sorry he was. We both cried together on the phone and promised we would soon get together, but we never did. Then I heard last week that Dewey Milk was on a business trip in Los Angeles, and along with 22 other people was killed in a hotel fire. I was devastated, but I was also haunted by that night when Fergus McDuff tossed Dewey's doll into the fireplace. I couldn't stop thinking that maybe that had something to do with Dewey's death, and it made me wonder the whereabouts of the doll that Fergus gave to me. I hadn't seen it in 30 years or so. Last I can remember, I put it in a cigar box my dad once gave me and stored it in my attic. I decided to dig out that cigar box and take a look at that creepy old doll. I went into the attic and moved piles of boxes and some other stored items. For a second, it reminded me of the piles of junk in Fergus McDuff's living room. I found an old box of toys and mementos from my elementary school days, and I pulled off the tape. It was mostly dusty plush toys, softball shirts and gloves, and sports cards. I cleared away the layers of memories until I finally located the wood cigar box. I remember wrapping the box with rubber bands, ribbons, and strings, which I pulled and cut off. I opened the box expecting to see the crude straw doll, but I was horrified. My God, the doll was not there. But what was there were two dolls I'd never seen in my life. A doll that looked exactly like my husband Alan, and a smaller doll which, oh my God, how could it be? Who put these other dolls in this old box, and where? Where was the old doll of me?